with my older brother. There were five of us in the family. I was the youngest, and it was, quite a transition living with my mom. She had her issues, and it was very difficult. One minute she was hot, next minute she was cold. One minute she's yelling and screaming, and next minute she's the most nurturing mother that I could ever imagine. So you can imagine, as a kid, like, where do I stand? What do I do? And not knowing right or wrong, all the time. And what might be right today was wrong tomorrow. And it was very inconsistent behavior. And that in itself was traumatic. And then a couple of years later, my mom decided to give custody to my father. And I did not see her after that. And about 5 years later, I was 13, she died of a heart attack. So I never saw my mom after she gave custody to my dad. She was around. Well, I'll say I did see her one time when I was walking to school. I happened to see a taxi cab drive by, and my mother was in the back seat. And I'm like, Dag, that's my mom. I think I don't know, maybe 12 years old. I took a double take. She didn't pull over, nothing. I never saw her after that, didn't call, nothing. But that was the last time I remember seeing her. And so going to live with my father, um, my father was, and I don't talk about this quite as much, but my father was pretty much a functioning alcoholic. And he was there physically for me, and I appreciated him for that. Yet there was a lack of emotional connection with him. He just didn't have it in him. And shortly after my mother passed, within the same year, my oldest brother was killed in an automobile accident. And so the two of those events took its toll on me as a child, as a 13-year-old, in a very prominent developmental stage. And and then it hit my father really hard. His oldest son and his wife, ex-wife, both died in the same year. And I found myself having to parentify him. He was unconsolable. Like, I would have to sit with him, and he would talk to me about my mom, and he would talk to me about my brother, and he would sob, and I had to take care of him. And I'm like, and I didn't wasn't aware of it at the time, but what about me? I'm a kid who lost his mom and his brother, and hello. So I had to kind of deal with that all by myself. I didn't really have any support around it. My siblings really didn't understand how to support me. So that was the nature of up until that time. And shortly after that, teenagers started dating, and my pattern started then, to where I would meet a girl, date, and I would overlap. I would find another girl that I liked, and I would dump the one that I was with and go to the other one. And that was a pattern that I established early on that went into my college years, all the way up through my first marriage. I was a radio personality for 35 years, and man, the women, it was too easy here in Philadelphia. Philadelphia, they love the radio personalities for some reason, and it's the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection. So the sisters were definitely affectionate, and so I was tempted, and yes, I did succumb a few times to that temptation, and I can't say that I'm proud of it. But I just realized at that time in my life that I really was immature. I didn't really belong in a committed relationship. My wife and I at the time, we got along great, no problems. We didn't argue very much. It was just me wanting my cake and eat it too. And I just realized that that was just wrong, and that I had to get out. And on top of that, one of the women I was seeing while I was married ended up being my second wife. So there I go again, overlapping. So this time I married a second person while I was on the radio doing my thing. She had four kids, and then we had a daughter together. And we were together for about 10 years or so. And in that time, I was dealing with some things, some stress of my job. I love my job as a morning show radio host, yet it was very stressful. the stress of kids and everything else. So I decided to go to therapy. And it was then that I realized that I had an abandonment issue. Yeah. And what that means is my mom abandoned me, literally. I mean, she left and then she left for good. She passed away. So there I was with this realization, oh, well, no wonder I overlap these relationships because, well, if she's going to leave me, then I better leave her first because I can't be abandoned, right? And so that made sense of my pattern. So that's when my infidelity stopped. Now, with that relationship, I it was kind of like almost recreating my childhood of five siblings. I had five kids, like we had a family of five. We had a dog. We had the whole nine yards. Big house, 27 room house, man. It was like living the life. And I started noticing issues in my marriage. And excuse me, one of those issues was that I found out that I was controlling. And I had no idea that I was controlling. I felt like I was a good guy, that, why not? I would never admit that I was controlling, and I wasn't aware, but the therapist pointed out to me. And because I was the breadwinner, because I had all the money, or not all the money, but most of it, I had a zero on top of her salary. And I just made all the financial decisions, the decisions around the home. I was just in charge, man. And I didn't feel like I was doing it in a bad way, but I had no idea that my wife felt that way. So that was an issue that I was trying to change. And on top of that, I realized I had the white and shining armor syndrome. That here I was, this successful guy. She was, came from North Philly and four kids, single mom. I'm saving the day. And so I'm here to save her. I'm here to save her kids. And, I'm the hero, right? So those two issues really got in the way. And I'm not here to throw any of my exes under the table. I'm here to take responsibility for me and what happened to me. It might make a more entertaining show if I went there, but that's not my goal. Um, so with that, our marriage ended up dissolving, and I remember my daughter went with her and her four stepchildren or step siblings, and I was alone in that 27 room house, and with an empty living room except for the rug, in the middle of that living room, just bawling, just crying, and in a fetal position because, Terrain, it was the first time in my life that I'd been alone in relationship. And we're talking in my 30s. And that is exactly what I needed. I was so afraid, terrified of being alone. And that's when I started to really work on myself, to be okay with me, to have compassion for myself, for all that I've been through. And I mean, I could tell my story, my tragic childhood story, as if I was telling you about, a night out on the town. Like it didn't really come across as really heartfelt. And that was feedback that I got that I had no idea I was coming across that way because I just kind of compartmentalized it, compressed it, never really dealt with it until later on. And then that's the time I was in therapy. I was going to workshops and traveling and getting trainings in different things. Um, and I ended up getting out of my lucrative radio career to open up my own holistic health practice. And I was still dabbling in radio. I was still there, but not the way I had been before. And I'm a master Tai Chi instructor, and my teacher was living with me at the time, and he was offering classes, and I met this woman in my class. And I'm like, wow, I got a woman that's interested in Tai Chi, and she's interested in me. And we kind of hit it off. And well, guess what? She was married and had a kid. And I'm like, okay. And I had enough, self-respect at that time to, I really wanted her, and yet I just couldn't deal with, they were like kind of separated, but weren't legally separated, living in the same house, She convinced me that the relationship was done, yet were staying together for the kid. And the kid was like a year and a half or so, toddler maybe. So that was a tough relationship. It was very much a roller coaster relationship, and I had to finally draw the boundary and say, "Hey, once you're divorced and everything is clean, give me a call. I'll see where I am, and let's see where we go." And well, lo and behold, I was available when she did all that, and we got together and eventually got married, had a son, and as things started to get, there was a struggle in the relationship. I said it was a roller coaster. Being married didn't change that, and it was really difficult. And I'll just say that I felt I was losing my identity with her because I think she was more attached to the celebrity guy that I was. I was more attached to the holistic health practitioner, the guy who had changed and grown in personal development and all those things, spiritual development. And I was trying to live up to an identity that she was had of me, and it just wasn't working. And I had to be true to myself. And so that was the end of that. And I ended up uh, in one room in someone's house. That's how far I had gone, and pretty much hit the bottom. And I was like, I'm done with the relationship, man. Like, this is it. I'm gonna go live a monk's life, work on my spiritual development, and and that's it. And so that went on for a little while. And one evening, I was sitting in meditation, and got this strong push, like this spiritual message saying, "It is time," like Rafiki and the Lion King, right? It's like, it is time. I'm like, huh? What? You got to be kidding. And man, I was like, no, no way. And it was so strong. And I'm like, look, dude, I I'm in this one room, one person's house. We got two kids. They don't even live with me right now. They're living with their stepmother. And oh, by the way, I just got laid off my job. This was during the recession. I was still doing some other stuff, my holistic stuff, but the radio thing was gone, and my life was at the bottom, man. And this push to be put myself out there on a dating site called Conscious Match, well, I did. The push was that strong, and I felt really weird doing it. 3 days later, after I posted, I get this poke from this woman who was local, because a lot of the pokes were not. They're in Russia or somewhere. And I said, she's only about a half hour away, and she's lovely, and let's see here. And so we started chatting via email. And I tell you, I put it all out there. I told her where I was right away, and she was like, well, at least you believe in marriage, 3 times, man, I can appreciate that. And what she told me was there was something in my eyes, in my picture, that drew me to her, and that she just trusted it. And so after putting out all my dirty laundry, she did the same. We did our values clarification before we even talked on the phone. And finally, we talked on the phone and we had great conversations. And then it was time to meet. And when we finally met in person, the moment my eyes looked at her eyes, what I thought inside and felt inside my heart was, I am home. This is home. And that was over 16 years ago. And I mean, it's just amazing how strong our relationship is. And I'm not just saying that, but I had learned a lot about relationship over those years, what not to do. And I did a lot of training, and I had a mentor that was a relationship counselor. And I knew all the right things, and I started learning these things and how to communicate and be vulnerable and empathetic and all the things we need to do to really make a relationship work. But they weren't working in my previous three. But it was an evolutionary process where, with all that, and finally got to this relationship, I put it all to use, and it worked. It's like, wow, somebody who can receive this, and really was starving for that kind of relationship. So that led me to pretty much where I am today, where the past 10 years, I've been a mind-body educator and integrative therapy practitioner at a major health clinic here in Philadelphia. And I have to say, most of my clientele were women. And excuse me, and I would hear the women say all kinds of stuff about their man. And I'm like, well, what if he were to say this, or what if he were to do that? And they were like, yeah, that would make all the difference. And I said, well, that's an easy fix. We can do that, you know. And that's when the light bulb started going off because I'm like, well, I can help these men out here because this is what I had to go through to get to the relationship I really wanted. And I had to learn a few things. And I also add, I had to tell the women, well, you could be doing this too, and maybe because he may be thinking this, or this may be his conditioning, so you may want to understand that. So anyway, with that is just led me to this love mission that I'm on right now, and that's to help men in relationship, help women in relationship, and spread more love and connection in the world. So I hope that wasn't too long of a story, but there you go.
That is absolutely beautiful. And I want to say that there's probably a lot of people who, after one breakup, they don't want to get back into a relationship, but you've had a number of them and you've taken it to the next level where a lot of people don't get marriage. It's the goal for a lot of people, but a lot of people don't get marriage. So as you look back, Bill, after one marriage, two marriage, three marriages, and your history with women, was there ever a point in your life where you asked yourself, is this for me?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, especially after the third. I mean, that's when I was ready to give it all up. Like, forget it. Like, I know all these things, and I've grown, personally, spiritually, all these things, and I felt like I've evolved. And now what? It's like, what's the point? And that was just all the experiences, I think, accumulating in my mind, to really distort how I was looking at relationship. And I needed someone that was open to the gifts that I had, And I remember one of my exes. I remember after going to therapy and I would say practice something that the therapist taught us. And she was like, well, don't give me that psychobabble bull, bull. And I'm like, wait a minute. We both agreed to do this, and we're supposed to be working on this. And I didn't do it as a way of controlling. I was sincerely trying to make these things work. And when you get feedback like that, like, and that's when it occurred to me that, well, maybe it's the person. They have to be open to this and open to a different way of communicating, etc. So yeah, I almost threw in the towel, man. Yeah.
So let me ask you then, what steps would you actually, let me take a step back and ask it this way.
Hmm.
Since you work with men and women and you've helped men because you said that you've gone through this,
Hmm.
how much of yourself do you see in the men that you help?
All the time. And that's how I can really support them. And I know with my personal growth, what always helped me, I had an amazing therapist, and she would always support me some kind of way. Like, well, yeah, I know the part of me, and or give an example of how it showed up in her life. And so when I can do that, like just sharing my story, now I wouldn't, spend 20 minutes telling my story because then that makes the session all about me. I can say, yeah, man, I've been through three marriages and blah, 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 and maybe a paragraph, and that's it. So that he goes, oh, damn, he's been through this. He knows what I'm going through, and that's the sole purpose. And man, when we feel supported in what we're going through, it opens us up. It allows us to be vulnerable, to feel safe, to really express what's going on inside. And if you have someone that doesn't have that experience, they might be able to help you on a more of a surface level, right? But to truly know what you may have been through or can relate to what you've been through,